In the lead up to its mid-season finale, fans of hit TV show Power took to Twitter with a verdict many just weren't in agreement with. After following James Ghost St. Patrick's effort to go straight via crooked means, some felt Star's flagship show was on par with coveted crime drama The Wire, HBO's originally overlooked, now revered TV series that's still deemed by many as the greatest ever made. The response to the comparison, well, was met with enough face palms to fill an arena. Few are in the same league as the Baltimore-bred crime series, but the truth is, one show did what the likes of Power barely managed to muster against David Simon's small screen opus, and it did it all from a council estate in Hackney, London. The show was Top Boy, and after a recent revival by Netflix this year, it continues to not only earn comparisons to Baltimore's finest drama, but has elements of its own that could be argued even give The Wire a run for its money. I'm Tom from Screen On Point, and this is Top Boy, The Wire, and beauty within the bleakness. For folks outside of the UK, Top Boy might be the most raw and realistic interpretation of the English climate your average Anglophile might not have given the time of day to. Cemented at the other end of the spectrum from the likes of pristine and proper shows like The Crown and Downton Abbey, Top Boy arguably delivers an unflinching examination of the drug-riddled underbelly of inner city London and those affected by it, as well as other important issues. The show's creator, Ronan Bennett, left no topical stone unturned by drawing in on mental health, gentrification and family life in some of London's most impoverished areas. At first glance of a plot synopsis, fans of HBO's classic series won't take long to spot the comparisons between the recently resurrected show and David Simon's revered 5-season masterpiece, both honed in on an unforgiving drug trade ladder and the various individuals that inhabited it from the highest rung to the lowest with immense detail, courtesy of the creative minds that built them. Just as The Wire was devised from long-residing Baltimore journalist and writer David Simon, Top Boy stemmed from Hackney local novelist Bennett, who, while Belfast-born, deemed the area he'd call home for 25 years as the only place in London where you can have any kind of accent you want. Already an established writer prior to the show, Bennett's idea sparked from observing a 12-year-old boy dealing drugs outside his local supermarket. Keen to depict a narrative based on this moment, with his focus above all ensuring that the message it delivered was as accurate as it could be, Bennett enlisted respective member of the community and fitness training friend Jerry Jackson to help bring his idea to teleplay. A true Hackney boy born and bred, Jackson introduced the then 55-year-old Irishman to young dealers and retired police officers to understand the drug problem within the area and its effects. Stories of weed farms managed by pregnant single mothers aiming to make a life for themselves, or debts being paid to dealers via an iron to the chest, were some of the accounts obtained, and reimagined on screen in the same way the coveted American drama had done before it. David Simon and the co-writer of The Wire, retired homicide detective Ed Burns, ensured to insert variations of characters they knew and stories they had been told during their time in their respective fields. Doing so resulted in the creation of fan favourite bubbles born from a real-life police informant, or Avon Barksdale based on former drug kingpin Melvin Williams, who appeared in the show's 3rd season. Just like The Wire, Top Boy, striving for that familiarity within the culture that audiences would pick up on and appreciate, came with its own dialect that ensured that every character was a believable one, fleshed out and flawed, but with a voice that rang as true as those filling Hackney's streets.
If you need food, come to me.
So you think I'm here to get your permission to shop food?
This aim for authenticity wasn't just established by Bennett, but also the cast involved, often tweaking scripted conversations in between takes, simply because the actors had lived it themselves. Both Walters and Robinson, the two leads, were locals to the area, as were some of the younger cast who were going through it even when the cameras stopped rolling. A friend of Malcolm Camlett, who played Rennell, died from a knife attack during filming, proving just how close to home this show was. As a result, this led to Top Boy meeting the same reception as, and ultimately being compared to, the coveted American drama, not simply for the tale it was telling, but the detail applied to the complex characters involved in it. Neither of them constructed stereotypes, but struggling people making bad decisions for the better. How that was displayed in each show, though, was drastically different. While both shows took great effort in making their respective tales as real as possible, how that was visualized was a very different story. Rather than have the glossy flashbang wallop what a murder scene of CSI from the time, The Wire went with a more documentary feel. Mid and long shots were regularly used, keeping the audience at a distance, fitting in with a show that focused on surveillance as if it were witnessing real interactions, commanding us to lean in for more. The only major fancy tricks used throughout the show being used on the rarest of occasions, with the likes of slow motion and a flashback that was included in the pilot at the request of HBO. As mentioned in an interview with Creative Cow during the show's final season, executive producer Joe Chappelle described The Wire's filming methods as very straightforward and simple. That's a stylistic choice, keep it lean. Here's where Top Boy and ultimately its audience got a very opposing viewpoint. One aim from the off was ensuring that this mostly unseen corner of London shown was still a beautiful one, regardless of the drama unfolding in it. Speaking to Vice back in 2016, the first season cinematographer Tat Radcliffe explained how upon speaking with Jan Demange, the director who worked on the debut season, the aim was about doing something kind of epic, large scale and cinematic, trying to make London look vibrant. We just wanted to make elegant images really. That's apparent in season 1, specifically with both Deshane and Sully's activities, as well as young Rennell, who was trying to avoid them. Whilst Demange and Radcliffe talked of shining a light on the beauty of London, they certainly weren't afraid to go dark when they had to. For example, in the sequence where the two main characters plan on kidnapping a competitor's brother as leverage, it shows Deshane's gradual descent into darkness as a reflection of the act he's about to be a part of. We first find him on the same train as his target, the view as clear as his intention, which is lit up by the carriage light. Gradually though, as he tails his target out onto the London streets, he becomes almost indistinguishable from his surroundings until Sully does the job for him. From there, it's a dark drive out to the middle of nowhere before being rounded off by the often replicated use of red tail lights illuminating our protagonists' faces, almost a nod to the iconic moment from Goodfellas. It's an alarming sight when they realise Sully has accidentally killed their captive, shining a light on their hellish fall into even more danger. In contrast with Rennell, Radcliffe made sure that one of the only characters with the brightest future had a lot of the same type of imagery accompanying him. Often tempted by Deshane's path, his internal struggle was displayed externally in the cinematic style Radcliffe was referring to. This was beautifully shown in his solitary visits to the rooftop, looking out across the London skyline, establishing his personal battle to keep his head above the dangers he was so desperate to avoid. In the first episode, Rennell's trip to the roof is one in the dead of night, with only the twinkling light of the London nightlife lighting the scene and Rennell all but consumed in darkness. In the closing fourth episode though, with some issues resolved, of course at major costs, Rennell watches as a new day shines on the city, still only managing to stay above it, but with the horizon clearer than it was before. It was a beautiful visual journey that said everything that Rennell didn't explicitly need to tell the audience through dialogue. This use of yellow was one that followed Rennell throughout the first season, also displaying the tested connection with his mentally ill mother Lisa. We see at one point him painting his mother's room as a surprise welcome home present, doing away with the faded blue that used to be there. That's before cutting to Lisa sat with a therapist, and the back wall the same shades, only this time the blue overwhelmingly the prominent colour from the previous scene, acting as a representation of Lisa's illness, keeping her at distance from her son. Moments like this affirm Bennett's goal that was mentioned in an article from The Guardian that Top Boy was much more than a crime story. It located Deshane and Sully in a community. Family was the beating heart of the show. Giving these families such attention was what allowed Top Boy to thrive, showing its more minor players scramble to find their way out in major ways, ultimately helping in weaving a tapestry of compelling stories cut from the same cloth as The Wire, only presented arguably in a far more filmic fashion. Of course, there are a number of memorable locations that spring to mind from The Wire, like the pit that hosted the infamous chess lesson, or that dusty cellar that was the base of operations for McNulty and co, but arguably none were using this sort of imagery to get the message across, quite like how Top Boy highlighted the good, the bad and the ugly of England's capital. This was even more present in the most recent season that turned out to be one of the best bits of television in 2019. Backed by Netflix following the show's cancellation after season 2 in 2013 and resurrected by unlikely superfan Drake, Bennett stretched out the previous 4-episode formula to a bingeable 10, giving time to catch up with characters that had been left to stew for 6 years with their own problems, and squaring off with an opposition that was just as complex. As before, the show highlighted the same issues that sadly remained unchanged: drugs, violence, immigration, struggling family life, and most prominently, the varying perspectives of masculinity and its pressures were tended to just as delicately. Incredibly, 8 years on from the beginning of Top Boy and an unthinkable 11 years on from The Wire's end, what's clear is not that shows like this can be compared, but not enough of them exist. Few other chunks of television have touched a nerve as hard as these, with a realism, sensibility and beauty that makes it one of the best TV shows in recent years. It might not be seen on level with The Wire just yet, but with season 4 given the green light, it could certainly get there. After all, you can't stay on top forever. Thanks so much to Nick Staniforth for writing this piece. You can follow him on Twitter at Nick Staniforth. Thanks for watching that video. Please do like and subscribe. We upload 2 tasty and tenderized videos a week to sink your teeth into, and do let us know your thoughts in the comments. Make sure to follow us at Screen On Point and Tom A. Ransom on Twitter to satisfy my narcissistic need for acceptance and love, and you make sure you have a wonderful day.